Hello to all of you from around the world. I want to thank you for joining us for this great edition of Soulivity Today. We are broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and whether you're at home, driving, or at work, we are always glad you're here with us. Like I said before, we have another fantastic show for you today with a very special guest who I'll introduce to you in just a moment. But first, I want to welcome back to Soulivity Today, our own conscious life coach, Sheila Applegate. Hey, Sheila, what's going on?
Hey, Brian. Well, we have sunshine here today, so that's wonderful news.
Yeah. Woo, woo. I love it. I love it. I think we're supposed to get some sunshine in DC today. I hope we get sunshine. It's been like off and on kind of overcast here. And so it's like,
Mhm.
you know, and not as cold as it was a few weeks ago. So I'll take it.
Yeah, that's nice. We're on day 3 of sunshine after a spell of like a month without seeing the sun, so it feels good.
Right, right. Do you still have snow on the ground or no? Is it all gone?
We do not. No, we don't have any snow.
Wow. So it
So
just came and
I
went.
even saw some flowers popping up, but that's really early for us. So we'll see what
Wa-
happens.
Wow. Wow. Well, I am so excited about today's show specifically because it's a topic that you and I talk about all the time, and that is, our creativity, right? Um,
Mhm.
and connected to like your imagination and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of times people don't really get that your creativity and your imagination and how you utilize it and foster it really can make a big difference in just you pursuing your life's goals. And so I'm really glad we're going to be talking about this
Yeah, me too. And we have a
today.
great guest.
Exactly. So, as I was saying before, everyone, we're going to be talking about maintaining our creativity today. But I wanted to start it out like this. Guys, when I was preparing for today's show, I started to kind of remember how my parents were always happy to buy me things, which is so great, that would support growing my imagination. Um, I specifically remember once when me and my dad went to the local Radio Shack. Remember those? Whew. And he saw that I was interested in one of the electronic kits, with wires and transistors and diodes and such. And he walked over and asked if I wanted it. And of course, I said a resounding yes. And, I think I played with that thing for hours upon hours. I think another time it was a Lego set, you know, such fond memories. I think the bigger lesson, though, was that they were trying to give me what was to learn and to how to grow, keeping my creative juices flowing, to always keep my imagination kind of close to my heart as I move through life. Well, that's what today's show is all about. Through the life story of our special guest, we'll dig a little deeper into how creativity isn't an option for living a best life. It is an absolute necessity. So let's meet our special guest. From his bold decision to leave his home behind and join the British Royal Air Force at age 17, to his time spent with Scotland Yard's Serious Crime Directorate, the life of Bill Walker is a remarkable story of determination, reinvention, and resilience. He now dedicates his life to something that he has always loved, photography. And armed with modern digital imagery and manipulation techniques, Bill creates high-end art pieces that blend his life experiences and his artistic vision. He is also looking to complete his first book shortly. It explores the resilience of a man who fearlessly embraced multiple careers and his life to the fullest. And so with that, it's my pleasure to welcome back to Soulivity today, Bill Walker. Hey, Bill, how are you doing, sir?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, we had you on a few months ago, and it was such a fascinating discussion that we really wanted you to come back and talk more about this idea of maintaining our creativity as you have, and how it's kind of like been there all along your entire life path through different things. I mean, that some people could think that are like disparate, right? And so let's go ahead and dig in. Can you tell us about your life growing up there in the UK? Let's start there, like from when you were a kid, and life with parents and that kind of thing, because there was some twists and turns that happened later on as you got older.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting one because the one thing that sticks in my mind is my aunt said to my mother quite early on when I joined up, she would have been really worried had her son joined up and wondered what was going off at home. Now, the irony of it was I had a really good home life. There was nothing untoward. I wasn't really running away from anything. That said, in Sheffield, in England at the time, we were at the height of the recession in the late 70s, early 80s. I knew for a fact I didn't want to go into the steel industry. It wasn't me. And I do remember having a conversation with the headmistress. I was actually called to the headmistress's office because at that time we had to make choices between metalwork and woodwork, or cookery and sewing. It was kind of that's the way it was back then. I knew I wasn't going to work in a factory, and I knew I wasn't going to be a carpenter. I could feed myself, so I opted to do cookery. This obviously came with the needlework side of it. And I was actually called to the headmistress's office because of this. And you realize what you're doing, you're going to have to do. And I'm like, yeah, it's cooked. So from there, it was kind of, my logic was, well, I'll always have to feed myself. Right. You know, it is what it is.
Wow. Sheila, do you have a question?
Yeah, so we're talking about the creativity, and clearly you've had that kind of inclination since you were young, but then you went from that home life and those maybe limiting choices and then into the military. How did that affect you well, tell us a little bit about that journey and maybe how the creativity either was able to stay through it or became a little dormant. What was that like for you?
The military, once you join the military, the whole mindset initially is to almost mold you, especially with young people. So the creativity side, really, there's no real room for it at that stage. It's only later in life when you things come out. I think we mentioned the last time we spoke that I've got very few photographs and very few photographs of me because you're so preoccupied in what you're doing. The camera went with me. I think we spoke, Brian, earlier. You had the old 110 camera, the same as me.
Yeah,
it went
exactly.
with me, but the option to use it was very limited back then. Obviously, you're quite busy, especially. So you move into out of the training phase, and then you're trying to get involved in the squadrons, and it's a whole different ball game. It's a change. It is a life-changing thing. Anybody who's been in the military will tell you it's a dramatic change. The one thing I knew was I never went, even my wife says, I never went for normal. I jumped out of aircraft before I joined up. My parents bought me a parachute jump for my 17th birthday. I couldn't play football or soccer. I got 2 left feet. You know, I always gravitated to other things. And it was, like I said, at 10 years old, I started studying martial arts as a way to, not to escape, I guess, but to confidence. Which it did. It obviously instills discipline. And so from a very early age, I was going down a certain path, even though I didn't know it. Now, I suspect, speaking to some of my colleagues, and I spoke to somebody a while back, I thought I'd spread myself a little bit thin and over the years become jack of all trades, master of none. And he actually came back at me and said, no, I disagree, because what we teach here, and he was the senior instructor at one of the military's photographic establishments here in the UK. And he said, what we teach here in all its facets of photography, done operationally. He said, I've got nobody on my department staff that's actually done everything that you've done in anger, as it were.
Wow.
And so it's quite interesting from a photographic point of view. And again, these days, we've all got cameras on our person. We've all got phones and the opportunity. There's so much digital imagery out there now. It's probably harder for professional photographers to make a living, to be truthful.
What did you think about that? So when this instructor it feels like what he said to you kind of pulled you back into what is true reality, right? About what you were doing. How did that feel? I mean, you're in the military, you're there to fight and all this kind of stuff, but here you are also with this camera and this kind of thing and doing that work as well. Did that kind of register something different in you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It made me think. I mean, up until that point, I was kind of concerned. I mean, it took me a long time to realize that the fact that I've moved from occupation to occupation, discipline to discipline, you do kind of wonder, you're a little bit aimless. And until somebody points out to you, there doesn't have to be a specific path. You don't have to have a plan and stick to it rigidly. Sometimes the best things come out of left field and you can run with it. But up until that point, yeah, I was a little bit concerned, but it kind of brought me back to, as you say, to a point where I wasn't overly concerned about it. And I did kind of say, you know what, we'll go with the flow and we'll see what happens. As luck would have it, when I came back from the US back in the early 90s, mid 90s, I kind of fell back into the system and ended up working for the police in a photographic capacity,
right,
which is not really something I expected. A lot of military guys, when they come out of the military, will gravitate towards the uniform. And I made a conscious decision. I wasn't going to put a uniform on. I didn't want it again. I'd done that portion of my life and it was time to move on. So the police wasn't really an option for me. In fact, I left the UK after the military and went to America and worked in Miami and Puerto Rico for a while as a photographer. So again, that was another facet that as a married guy with a family, you wouldn't really expect to make that jump. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for us over there and I ended up coming back. But yeah, like I say, I hit the ground running with the UK and ended up working for the police, which is, again, because I never really expected that in a million years.
Well, listen, we're going to dig into that in just a minute, but we're going to take a quick break. But before we do this break, I just want to remind everyone that February is Black History Month here in America. And so here on Soulivity today, we're going to be featuring certain great clips and interviews with different people talking about things that you may or may not know about Black history. So we'll be right back in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Alexander Hamilton consistently told George Washington, get freed slaves into the army and we'll deal with our manpower issues. But, George Washington couldn't do that. He was a Virginia planter and he owned a lot of slaves. And all of his friends, if he made it possible for them to lose their slaves to the army, that was a lot of wealth that would be taken from them and it would not return. So the people that measured their wealth in slaves did not want to see those slaves being freed. And Washington had to deal with those two issues, especially in his own life. Hamilton really was the only one of the American founding fathers who was a committed abolitionist. The writing of the Declaration of Independence really shows how you can have two mindsets, all right? There's one mindset for people of European ancestry who have money and land. And then there's another mindset for people of color who don't have money or land and who are exploited for their labor. So what you're dealing with is a situation where people are setting up one system that protects their rights and ensures their enshrinement, their rule of law, and the wealth that they want to accumulate, and condemns another group to subservience. That's what was set up. I think Alexander Hamilton really made it clear that we could only have it one way. I mean, you can't have it both ways. And he could see that the need for the Southerners to have slavery and the need for other parts of the country not to have slavery were going to lead to a conflict, but there was nothing he could do about it.
Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. Well, hello, Washington, D.C. Yay, it is so sunny with blue skies. And looks like it's trying to get a little greener out there. Just a little bit. Well, listen, we are so glad you're with us. We're back here with more on Soulivity today, where we are discussing our creativity and how it can thrive wherever life takes us with Bill Walker, artist, writer, former CSI for Scotland Yard, along with conscious life coach and my fellow co-host today, Sheila Applegate. Good hello to all of you. I'm trying to say good morning, but it's good morning to you, Sheila, and good afternoon to you, Bill.
Hey, good afternoon.
Sheila, I'll go to you
though,
for
so we're all right.
Oh yeah, exactly. More Joe. Sheila, I'll go to you for the next question.
So, Bill, I'm thinking about now you're in, and this part of your life has always fascinated me too, and I don't know that much about it, but when you're in now the crime scene investigation and forensics and you're using your photography, what is that like for you, both as a person and an artist? Can you share some of that experience and the feelings even that went through, the thoughts?
That's a very, very interesting question, and it's something I've come across. I know from personal experience, having come across other guys and girls with experience, some people didn't quite understand initially their the difference, the disconnect between art and photography. So when you go as a crime scene examiner, which was the role I had initially, I was a crime photographer, my apologies. So initially, that's all you do. You go to crime scenes, you record the scene, it's evidential. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, somebody who's got a little less life experience and their background is predominantly art and photography and that side of it, they can still become crime scene photographers, and they'll do the training. They'll go to what used to be Hendon Police College, and they'll do a very specialized course where they'll be taught how to deal with crime scenes, arson, suspicious deaths, you name it. You cover the whole gambit right from scratch. It doesn't matter what your background is and your experience. I was very fortunate in as much as I'd actually done a couple of years in the Air Force as a photographer. My last couple of years were purely as a photographer. And I was fortunate enough, thankfully, to be posted where the aerobatics team are, the Red Arrows. So my front window was great because I had an air display pretty much every day. But the actual crime scene photography side of it, I always viewed the camera as a shield. And it's a bit like watching things on TV. You're not really there. There's that disconnect.
Right.
Now, I've been very, very fortunate, and I know some colleagues and some people in more recent history that I've worked with haven't had the same experience, and it affects them. You know, everybody has that point. Everybody's got that breaking point, and sometimes you just don't get away with it. And there sometimes you will get to the point where the mental fatigue kicks in, and it will manifest itself in many, many different ways. Some people, I mean, PTSD is kind of a generic now, but it's not just one thing. It's many, many factors. But I always found I actually cope with a lot of things as long as I was working. So if there's a camera with me, it wasn't an issue. And I've over the years covered some pretty. You have more experience than your average police officer does dealing with crime scenes, because obviously that's your
Okay.
bread and butter. You're there every day. It's not something people realize. And we did back in here in the UK, we had a very, I don't know if you want to say famous or infamous, a rail disaster at Ladbroke Grove, the Paddington rail disaster. It was labelled by the press. And I was one of the first to attend that, and probably one of the last to leave the site. And unfortunately, there were many, many, many deaths. Multiple carriages derailed in the centre of London.
Wow.
And it was quite harrowing. And then we all had a debrief at the end of this, just to top and tail it. And to be fair, it was in the early days of mental welfare, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't remember a lot of that scene. I've spoken to my wife about, because obviously she lived this life with me. She's often said it was like being married to two different guys, the guy that went to work and the guy that was at home with the family doing the normal domestic stuff.
Wow.
And we've had conversations where she's mentioned things to me and I've actually said, I don't remember that. And there are actual crime scenes that I've attended that have had such an effect on me that, whether by default or design, I can't remember it. It's
Wow.
very, very strange.
Wow. Wow. Do you think that I want to say creativity, but it's this part of yourself that you cultivated over all this time in these different situations where you were able to healthily compartmentalize different things? You think that's it, or because that's actually a pretty beautiful gift to have, coming, serving in the military, where you're seeing that kind of violence and capturing different things, and then going into the police force and that kind of thing, where it's even more harrowing every day, right? Because you're seeing it over and over and over and over and over again. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, by the nature, I mean, initially they were separate departments. So you'd got crime scene photographers like myself, and then you had the scenes of crime officers. Eventually, with the digital revolution, that kind of sealed the deal, and they much merged everybody, which is why I am a crime scene examiner in the latter years of my police service. It's very. Oh, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. Sorry, Brian, what did you ask me? It's just completely gone.
So do you think that your ability as a photographer, this resource or tool has effectually helped you to deal with these different situations, especially being a police, I mean, like you're on the crime scene, right? Here's the body or bodies, and somebody has to take pictures of all this stuff and get the detail right, because that goes into those records. Do you believe that that was one way of how you've been able to healthfully compartmentalize different things?
Anybody will tell you, especially from a military background, when you've been drilled,
Okay.
all of a sudden you're not actually thinking about what you do. And I think that's a big part of it. For me, certainly. You get on with the work. You know what you've got to do, and you go by the numbers. Creativity really doesn't come into it. The irony is creativity and the passion for photography got me in position in the first place. And I think, as we've discussed before, I got to the point where I kind of fell out with photography and really didn't do any recreational work for a long time. The case in point, my eldest son, I used to take a portrait every year as he grew up. My youngest son, who was born a few years later, I was immersed in that world and kind of fell out of love with doing photography from a social aspect. And so as a result, we got less photographs of my youngest son, which is unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. I don't think creativity comes into it in that respect. It's just you're drilled, and you go and you do what you need to do, and then you move away. I've been dealing with crime autopsies and things like that, and you get such a rapport with the forensic pathologists that you get to know each other quite well. And we were chatting, and on a few occasions, I've actually been left to do my own thing. He'll kind of say, well, we need this, and this. How long do you think it'll take you? And I'll make an estimate and say, oh, I'll take me about half an hour to do that. That's yeah. And the pathologist will kind of crack on and do his own thing, and I'll work around it.
Wow.
I always, my wife was a big fan of your CSI, and she hates me watching it with her because I'm kind of, I mean, everything's correct, everything's 100%, but I'll sit well, actually.
That's
no,
right. That's
wouldn't
wrong.
have taken
No, they don't do it that
time.
way.
Yeah. No.
That's funny. Sheila, you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm thinking two things, actually. One is, was there so you kind of, the photography became your work. It became sort of something you were compartmentalizing in your life. Did other passions like music or writing or even the creativity of being a parent, did those kind of come up in that compartmentalized life where you weren't at the crime scenes? How did creativity show itself in the part of Bill that did the family during that time?
I think I've always done a bit of writing, and music has always been very, very big. I mean, we've got a quite extensive music collection here. So my wife, we pretty much cover most genres. As the boys grew up, they get their own tastes, and the beauty about that is, in fact, I was saying this ironically enough, I was saying this the other day. I discovered music based on what my son found. Back then, we shared a laptop, shared a home computer. It was the early days of computer, the electronic digital age. So we shared a lot of music, and I discovered bands I wouldn't normally have discovered through my sons. And I think that's great. You dip into your kids' lives, and you each bring something to the party. You can learn from them just as much as they can learn from you. And with regard to discovering music, I'm always open. Especially, it's very easy to put aside the choices of your children's music on the grounds of it's the new modern stuff. It can't be any good. Probably as good as what we had when we were young. The reality is, yeah, it is. It is. It's kind of my granddaughter's in the car the other day wanted one of their favorite singers on, and I kind of found it on the phone, and we plugged it into the car. You know what? It was surprisingly good. Ariana Grande, actually. I'm kind of I'm amazed that I'd never listened before, but there you go.
Great plug for her.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I love that you said. Yeah, I love that you said that that the creativity and all these things aren't just coming from you, right? That you are also looking out and you're looking at your kids and other places, and it's like kind of feeds the soul, right? I mean, I do the same thing with my son in terms of like, you know, he writes, he raps, he still draws, and he's still doing that to this day. And that feeds my soul around, okay, you know, what are the things that I can do to keep moving forward and embrace new stuff, right? Embracing new kinds of ways to express myself the way that he and his friends and other people, even my wife, are doing different things, right? So I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Listen, we're going to take a quick break because when we come back, you know, I want to talk about with you, Bill, this transition out of police work into the private sector, which also included a lot of travel to different places for you, and how your life kind of moved and shifted and that kind of thing when you started doing that work as well. So listen, everybody, we're going to take this quick break and we'll be back in about 2 minutes with more of Soulivity Today.
Do you see me kneeling on this dual roller called Parasetter? It's actually comfortable because of this channel and the softness of the special foam. It feels like my kneecaps are being massaged. When I lie down, my spine is housed in this channel, while the convex rollers massage my muscles. They let go and lengthen. There's a traction effect from my head on the headrest and my mid-back from the rib wrap, which hugs me. When I start the breathing sequence, I feel calm because my cortisol levels are dropping. Lower cortisol means bye-bye constant hunger. Parasetter is 40 inches long and much more comfortable than old-style rollers, but it weighs only 10 ounces. Parasetter, just like Pilates was, is no longer an insider secret. Do yourself a favor. Reset your parasympathetic nervous system. Defeat stress. Lying, sitting, kneeling, or standing. This unique patented roller helps everyone.
Six years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
Hey there, we're back here with more on Soulivity Today as we're discussing our creativity and how it is a necessity, not an option, with Bill Walker, artist, writer, former CSI investigator and crime scene photographer for Scotland Yard. And back with me as well is conscious life coach Sheila Applegate. Bill, you know, I marvel at your life a lot of times because I know it, and it doesn't have anything to do with like the challenges and that kind of thing. But you've been pretty bold. You've been really bold in your decisions.
That's one word.
Yeah. And along with your wife as well, because she's been bold with you, right? And that you both, you along with your family, you've been on this journey together, going through these different experiences together. as you've created this amazing collection of art, we've put the link in our chat. So please, everybody, go to Bill's website. We'll talk more about that in a second. But you were in the RAF. You left the RAF through a quick stint through the US. You came back to the UK, working in the police. When was it? When did you feel it was enough? In terms of, okay, my life with working for the police force in Scotland Yard. When was that? Okay, I'm done, and now I'm going to move into the private sector. How did that all come about for you?
I think everybody has a point where they know enough's enough, or it's time to move on. And to be fair, I've done that a couple. When I first joined the Air Force, I was initially planning on doing a full 22 years. So what actually happened was I got to the 12-year mark and decided, no, I don't want this anymore. It was almost like, to say I'd outgrown it is probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I knew it wasn't for me anymore. And the same happened with police work. Whilst I was doing it, it was a time of change. At that point, we were actually training crime scene examiners to do the photographic side of the crime scene work. So they were multitasking. And as what would happen towards the end of my life, I would end up becoming a crime scene examiner, just like them. And the photographic departments, as they existed when I first started, completely were dissolved, which is a shame. But there's a logic to what they were doing, because ultimately you were getting, as they referred to it, a Rolls-Royce service, when all you needed was a compact to get from A to B.
Right.
Makes sense, you know. So with the digital revolution, everything evolved, and the crime scene examiners took over the photographic role. I kind of did that for a couple of years. That was the point when I realized it wasn't for me. I'd done various things within the police, including surveillance attached to SO11, as it was then, the Surveillance and Intelligence Unit. And then I went back to crime scene work, and having the high level, I realized that I didn't really want to go back to volume crime. And I was dealing with burglaries and car crime on a daily basis. And it never really changed from that. And I gave it a few years and knew it wasn't for me. It was time to move on. Now, during this period, I remember living in London, and I just finished a job and came home, and the news was on. And as the news was on, I actually witnessed all the 9/11 reports on the news as I'd finished that day.
Wow.
And it wasn't a catalyst, but it was certainly a factor in my decision-making moving forward. We'd always made a conscious choice. We wanted to come back to Scotland and live in the Highlands where my wife's family lived. And there were various factors that came into play, and the timing was just perfect. And that's what we did. But that would only work for me if I was working abroad, which I wasn't adverse to. But obviously there's a big family decision got to be made there, because obviously you're away for a couple of months. Any serviceman will tell you they don't get the choice. They join up. They know that they're going to do that sort of thing. As a civilian contractor, you're making a conscious decision. So that was something we had to discuss and decide between ourselves. And at the time, it was right. It worked. You know, so we did almost 2 decades working away. I mean, I initially had a 3 to 5 year plan. That didn't work out, obviously, because I was still there nearly 2 decades later. It was only when it arrived that it was a game changer. And we all came back to the UK. And again, a time for change again. It really was. I noticed you were showing some of the photographs there as we were chatting. I mentioned it in the last show that you did, the graffiti in Libya. I remembered we spoke about it briefly, and I thought I'd put a couple in for you this time. All that graffiti is gone now from there. It's such a shame, because some of it was just really, really beautiful work. And I was fortunate enough to be in Libya at the time when it was still there. and it was still a time of change, and things have improved over there. I still have area, but it I don't think it's gone quite the way they planned initially, sadly. But they're moving forward. They're moving forward, and hopefully things will get right.
Wow. Sheila?
Yeah, I really enjoyed looking at all the photos as they came up, and I still really love that sneaker photo of your shoes.
That's the original one
But
this time.
also the man's face that just you capture his eyes as the one that when you were obviously I think in the Middle East, but I'm watching those go by and I'm thinking about your story. A couple of things. One, that I'm thinking about the art, and that the art that I see you doing now, to me, not to psychoanalyze you, but it feels like a way of kind of processing that dance between the dark and the light that you've seen throughout your life. And to me, I would think that could be really healing for you, even as you're creating these great masterpieces. So hopefully that works for all of us. But I'm thinking about
It's good
is
stuff. I mean,
the book.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's like playing guitar. You know, sadly, my enthusiasm is far greater than my skill and talent when it comes to playing the guitar. But the reality is, I enjoy it. You know, I can get lost for hours playing guitar. I used to. I haven't done it recently, but you kind of get lost in the moment for your own entertainment, for your own pleasure. The sneakers one that you mentioned earlier, that was probably, and again, that's a really good example of that was taken in, and I was on a compound based up the Jalalabad Road, just outside Kabul. And obviously we had like the military, you got facilities and we got access to a gym. Now I just train or in for a run, and I put those outside of my room purely because they're, as my son puts it, they're a little bit on the smelly side. So yeah, quite right. Don't put your smelly trainers in the room. But the sun just hit them just right. I mean, the sun was low in the sky. It hit them just right. I hadn't moved. I think I might have just put the laces square just so they were straight and not tangled. But I hadn't moved that. That wasn't planned. That wasn't, they were there every day, sat on a bench, just airing out. And it was just one of those happy circumstances that, and it's quite a nice shot, even to like it. They're my old faithfuls. I don't know where, in fact, they're long gone now, sadly, but that particular shot I've turned into an abstract, which is also on the website. And if you look very, very closely, you will see the transformation between that shot and the abstract. So it's interesting. And again, the old guy and worker, that was on the same camp. We were having some renovations done by the locals. And I had some downtime, and there was just so many characters on site. You know, once you open your eyes, you open your eyes to the Afghans and the local life. And I've said the last time I was on, everybody has their own perspective, and the military, when they're serving overseas, and they will have their own perspective, and they may not have been as fortunate as I was to witness another side of life that you can witness in these places. And he was just one of I don't even remember taking it. But it was only when you get back and I look at it, because I always had a camera. I got a small digital camera with me at the time, and I kept it for report purposes and doing security reports and site surveys and things like that. Now most things are done on the phone. Back then I had a little Nokia. It hadn't got that facility, so I carried a camera with me. And again, under downtime, I just kind of helped myself to a few grabbed images. And his face was just kind of, you do wonder the life he had and his perception of what we were doing there. And I know everybody's got their own version of events of what happened in the early to mid 70s. And as I say, you come out with those images, and it's great for me. I can look back on it now and remember things. I mean, this morning before we did this, I was going through some old files, and I stumbled across some images that I'd not seen for a long, long time. And we do forget. And I think it's not like the old days with photographs where you can get the box out and go through the album and da-da-da. We commit all these to digital memory, and some of us are fortunate enough to collate these things and put them in some sort of a sequence. So it's good for me to be able to kind of look at these things.
When you look at these two photographs, to me, they represent the fact that you did not lose your creativity during any of these times, because you still had that eye. You took the moment to notice the beauty in the chaos around you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We mentioned this before. When we had clients asking to go to visit various places, I could see the logic of what they were asking. As a photographer, I completely got it. There's a place called Chicken Street where all the livestock is lined up to be sold early in the morning. There's various streets. They tended to, especially in Kabul, they tended to name the streets after the tradesmen that were there. So Chicken Street was predominantly poultry and butchery and things like that, and so on. Mechanic Street was all mechanics and engineering and things like that. You can understand the clients that I dealt with at that time were predominantly diplomats, NGOs, aid workers, want to experience things. I completely understood that. But from a security perspective, I mean, I've always said somebody like myself would be my own worst enemy, because as a client, I'm there. Because I'd be wanting to go and look at these places, and I'd be trying to push the boat out a little bit more and say, look, let's go and have a look at these places. It's got to be great, But it's not always practical, and it's safety is always paramount. So you've got to empathize with these people and kind of just diplomatically say, look, I get it, but I'm sorry, it's not happening.
Yeah. Bill, when we talk with you, it's always too short. Because because I have so many more questions about your life, specifically because of where you have been and this need. I would say it's a need for you to see and absorb the places where you've been. What's next for you? That'd be one question as we're running out of time. Can you tell us what's next for you in your life in terms of this part?
You asked me that last time, and I've got to be honest. I looked at my answer and I thought, yeah, you're moving forward. I've had a book on the back burner for an awful long time, and it's time I kind of put it to bed and maybe drew it to a close. So I'm going to try and work on the book a little bit more. We'll get it finished off. Strangely enough, I was speaking to my son about this recently, and we were talking about something specific, which I won't go into here, but the working title for the book has predominantly been Schnapps as a Drink. And there's a reason for that. And my son and I were chatting, and something came up, and I mentioned 2 chickens and a piranha. And he went, "Oh, Dad, that is such a great name for the book." So the book title may be changing.
Okay.
And I'm not going to tell you why the title is going to be called that. You're just going to have to buy the book and read and figure it out for yourself.
Okay. I love it. I love it.
Deal.
I love it.
You write it, we'll
deal.
read it.
Exactly. We'll come to the book signing over there. How about that?
Or bring you here
Absolutely,
for a
still.
book signing.
Oh yeah, well we'll bring you here. Yeah, either or both, right? Bill,
I'll do both.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I mean, again, when we talk about your life, it just opens me up because of where you've been. You have, again, this collection that documents where you've been, but also your life story along with your family says a lot about different things. Resilience, of course, taking bold decisions that move your life forward, the life lessons that you're giving your children, but they also are giving to you as well. And I think it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
beautiful. It's beautiful, man. So thanks for being here. Thank you a lot.
No, thank you.
Would you come back? Would you come back again?
Absolutely, be my pleasure.
All right. I love
I
it.
may
I
have
love
even
it. I
finished the
love
book by then. You never know.
Listen, everyone. Listen, everyone. We're running out of time, but just want to remind everyone that you can find out more about Bill Walker's fantastic collection of art. It's been created from different photographs from around the world by visiting Bill's website at www.digital-ink-co-uk. We'll have it up on our chats and that kind of information, so you can click and go right to it. Highly, highly recommend that you do so. Man, we're running out of time. Running out of time again. I guess when you're having fun, that's when the time passes. Sheila, you've got some cool things happening with you and Consciously Awesome really quickly. I know we're running up on time. Just want to remind everybody to go to Sheila's website at SheilaApplegate.com. You be the change by being your best with Sheila Applegate, and like her intuitive readings, but a whole lot of other stuff too. So go visit her at her website as well. Listen, just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us on Soulivity today. This is how we do it, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern on all of the Soulivity social channels, or you can listen or watch us on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California by going to their website or listening in your car, at home, or even at work. Until next time, this is Brian Westley Johnson saying thanks again for joining us. Keep working on your passion and purpose, people. That's going to lead you to a life of high quality living, or what we like to say, your best life today. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC